Welcome to this webinar, the third webinar in our Lunchtime Lightbulb series. The topic today is the high cost of staff turnover. Like I said, we're really pleased to have you along. I do apologise for my croaky voice. I have been struck down. You should know me by now. My name is Sarah Sabel and I am joined today again by Michael Meir, Cal Lecturer and Director. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome, Sarah, and congratulations on getting yourself out of your sick bed to join us today.
Very welcome. So just once again, before we get started, quickly, a few housekeeping items to run through. This webinar will run for about 30 or 40 minutes, again, depending on your questions at the end. The second half will be open to questions as usual. So as Michael is running through his presentation, please do jot down your questions in the questions or chat box, and I will read them out, have Michael answer them for everybody to hear. And as usual, this webinar will be available for you to keep. Once we're done here, I'll email you the link and the presentation. So, some hard facts. There are 11.5 million people employed in Australia, earning $638 billion per annum. Between 1.5 and 2 million of these employees are likely to leave their jobs in the next 12 months, taking with them customer relationships, internal networks, institutional knowledge and specialised skills. Some 80% of organisations agree that this has a negative effect on organisational effectiveness and financial performance. Staff turnover costs an organisation with 100 employees around $1 million per annum, assuming a staff turnover rate of about 18%, an average salary of $75,000 and a conservative turnover cost per employee of 75% of annual salary, including the cost of recruitment, selection, induction, training and lost productivity whilst getting up to speed. Organisations that reduce employee turnover by as little as 5%, for example from 18% to 13%, will save around $280,000 per year for every 100 people they employ. All of these statistics come from the 2012 Insync Surveys Retention Review, Insync Surveys Melbourne 2012. Wow, Michael.
Oh, well, Sarah, that's a lot of grief in those figures. Look, we'll come back to that later on, and I'll give you a spreadsheet, walk you through a spreadsheet to show you how in your organisations you can calculate the costs. In today's webinar, however, we'll look at the reasons that people leave, average turnover rates, tenure rates, interventions and common retention strategies, and of course your questions.
Yet again, Michael, you've given us a very full program, so we'd best press on.
Sarah, done. Let's get started. The 2012 Insync surveys you referred to before suggest that 80% of the reasons why people leave their jobs are firmly within their employer's control. Overall, the 5 key reasons or factors cited for reasons for leaving a current job are, firstly, job satisfaction, career opportunities, a better job offer, personal reasons, or to pursue professional development. And this is expanded out in the following table. Now, you can see in there job satisfaction was the big one. But again, I'd ask you to focus in on here. Please look at the relationship with your direct supervisor or manager. As you go down, you can see work-life balance, pay and conditions, work stress, etc., etc. But really, we're looking at job satisfaction, relationships with your direct manager and supervisor, balancing work-life and your demands, work-life balance, pay and conditions, and work stress, followed quickly there by career opportunities and development.
This graph is really, it's interesting, Michael, because it lists 16 reasons for leaving. And while pay and conditions is right up there, it's actually not the top reason for leaving, as there are a number of other reasons that sit right alongside pay and conditions. So as well as job satisfaction, other important factors are their line manager or supervisor and balancing work-life demands and work stress.
Sure, absolutely. That's it. Once again, you've nailed it. There's a 2008 study by ARIES of the reasons why people leave organisation, they say, and it rather confirms the previous research. Now, it found lack of promotional opportunities, inadequate pay, poor relationships with immediate supervisors, and poor work-life balance. This study was done 4 years before the Insync report, but identifies the same reasons and just in a slightly different order. Now, you can see in this expanded list here of all the reasons, and it's given by company size. It's a survey called the Pulse Survey, Love 'em, Don't Lose 'em, identifying retention strategies that work. Sarah, you can run through the list in there, and this will be available to them on the webinar. We can send out to people, but the really critical point here is that irrespective of the reasons why people live or leave or who's right or who's wrong, 80% of the reasons people leave their jobs is within management's control. People join organisations, they leave managers. So managers can fix or influence many of the factors that cause people to leave by rectifying, by making things more attractive, by engaging people so they won't see reasons to leave.
Michael, it seems to me that what you're talking about here is really about employee engagement and implementing factors that will make employees want to stay with an organisation rather than look elsewhere, which is great. So how about we talk about turnover, or the word you use, Michael, churnover?
Sarah, if we go and have a look at this next table, again taken from the RE report, HR Pulse, you can see by sector average turnovers. Now, accommodation and food services up at 40%. You would expect that because of the casual nature of a lot of the employment there. But as we get down in there into turnover rates of around 20% on average, what that means is that every 5 years you've effectively turned over your whole staff. Now that has an enormous effect on corporate memory, learning curves, etc., etc. The following ABS table, which looks at short-term people who have turned over within 12 months of joining organisations, and again that paints a pretty grim picture. Up the top you'll see, as you would expect, accommodation, food services, a big turnover, but let's look at mining. And again you can see people who have come in to sampled mining as an attraction because it has attracted pay rates, etc., etc. But reality, a lot of people get there and simply don't like it. So again, very important one. The picture tells 1,000 stories, and frankly, none of them look very pretty. The lesson here is that Australian workplaces, on average, have a high churn rate or turnover that needs to be addressed. Now, we just ask our participants today, do they know what their average turnover rate would be?
Yeah, we're going to do a quick poll once again. So if I just bear with me 1 second, you should see up on your screen the question, do you know what your turnover rate is? With the answers yes, no, or I've never thought about it. I guess that could be similar to I don't have access to that kind of information or statistics, those kinds of things. So we're just waiting for everybody to fill in their votes. We're almost there. And I think everybody has put in their vote now with a staggering, actually I'm surprised, a 60% have said yes, Michael, and 40% of people have said no, which actually surprises me, but that's terrific. We'll have some great questions, I'm sure, as 60% of people in the room know what the statistics of their turnover rate are.
Just looking at those figures here, they're now at 60%, 67% yes, 33% no. That's about right. Yep. It's pretty much reflected across the Australian workplaces. All right, we'll come back to that later on. So, look, we've briefly looked at turnover. Now, let's look at tenure, or length of time an employee stays with a company. Figures differ around tenure. Some sources say the current average tenure in Australian workplaces is 4 years, declining to 3 years by 2020. Now, we saw that last week in our demographic changes. The Corporate Leadership Council, based in America, but the world's leading driver of HR practices, says the average turnover or tenure for all workers is around 7 years, with more than 40% of employers have been in a current job for more than 5 years, and with some who have been 25% in the same job for more than 10 years. Now, that's quite often in jobs, public sector jobs, and jobs where the motivation for being there is because people want to make a difference. Job stability, however, is very unevenly distributed. Good graphic. Job stability is distributed unevenly across places, whilst on average 1 in 5 workers experiences a change in the employment every year. That's 20%. Individuals' experiences may vary quite a lot, with some workers staying for quite relatively long periods. ARI gives turnover by expected tenure, as you can see in the following table, much the same as the Pulse survey we saw before. The big churn factor of 53.7% is in the 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 year tenure groups. Now, this is just when people are hitting their straps. They've learned the job, they've got it, and suddenly they should be optimising their productivity. Suddenly they're out the door. That's not a good return on human capital.
Wow, Michael, so does this mean that less than 20% of the total workforce have an expected tenure of 5 years or more? I mean, what can we do about this?
Sarah, companies really need to aim to effectively target and promote retention strategies. Interestingly, ARI surveyed some of the more typical interventions done by organisations to increase retention, as you can see in the following table. All of these actions should help overall to reduce overall churn rates and to build employee engagement. Here's a list of what people can do. Now, first of all, improve induction processes. And you might say, why induction? Because if you don't get it right and hit off on the right basis in the first 3 months, people are always going to feel as if they not wanted and don't fit in. Obviously, employee communications, particularly around feedback. Providing people with learning and development opportunities is an important one so they can improve their skills. Increasing pay, improving selection processes, so you're making sure you've got the right people on the boat. Providing family-friendly work-life arrangements for people is very important.
I think that's interesting from our last week webinar, Michael, talking about the different generations, and with what was it, 34% of Gen Y is going to be 34% Gen Ys in the workforce by 2020.
Absolutely.
So we need to make sure we can still attend our yoga classes, Michael.
Does this relate to your good self, Miss Sarah, perhaps?
It might just.
Oh, well, there we are. So if we look at those, obviously then, improving line manager HR skills. Again, I said before, people join organisations, they leave bosses. Really important that managers and supervisors got very good interpersonal skills. Again, providing coaching, mentoring, buddy systems, a great use of people using the skills of baby boomers before they leave the organisations. Improving benefits, of course. Revise the way that people are awarded and their efforts recognised. That's an extremely important part. Again, providing better developments for career development, involving people in decision making, improving the physical working conditions. People want to work in good, nice, bright working conditions. Making sure that people actually know the pay and conditions that they've got so that the grass is greener here rather than on the other side of the fence. Redesigning jobs to make them more satisfying. Also introducing alumni product, and also things like introducing company blogs or social networking. Frankly, bringing back to life the old social club.
Wow, this is really terrific, Michael. So perhaps before we open up the floor to questions, you could quickly run us through interventions and common retention strategies.
To attract and retain top talent and to make sure we can redress this shorter employee life cycles, companies should use more customised retention practices and particularly ensure that they have the support of senior management and HR. Retention strategies should target individual employees or particular groups.
I can see that, Michael, definitely, but it seems to me from what we've covered today that there are many strategies a company could use to help attract and retain talent as well as address the shorter employee life cycle. What would you suggest we focus on first?
Sarah, I think there are 4 key strategies, or what I'll call the drivers of retention, the things that you need to get right first. After that, the rest can follow. And these are obviously a competitive remuneration base and benefits, high manager quality, job fit, and a positive work culture and environment. Now, let's look at each of these in more detail, starting with remuneration and benefits. Compensation and benefits is very often regarded as a #1 driver of retention. Some of the challenges that people have in here is, look, where you've got good programs, it's very important that you communicate the value of those packages to people. Secondly, you have to, some of the challenges there of competing with firms who are offering higher pay wages. Well, again, you have to, in your employee value proposition, clearly communicate the benefit of working here. Also, you very much have to compensate fairly your middle level performers, and that will be the majority of your people in your workplace. They've got to be compensated fairly, not just your stars. And offering, of course, your employees greater opportunity to get a bit of skin in the game, whether that be equity or bonuses or other incentive schemes.
Yeah, that's terrific, Michael. I think what you've said about the communication is really important. Like, it's not so great if you have a package, a reward package. If nobody knows about it, then it's no good sitting in someone's drawer, I guess. And also, I already have a question coming up about how you compete with elevated pay packages. So it's great that we're covering this off now. But Michael, what about the quality of the manager?
Sarah, this is absolutely essential. Very often we promote the wrong people into managerial positions, and we've promoted them based on their technical expertise or their ability to achieve results. Reality is, as managers, we're there to manage and get our work done through people. Therefore, relationships are absolutely crucial, and that depends on interpersonal skills. So what we have to do is train managers in leadership. We've got to develop their soft skills, including relationship building, emotional intelligence, communication and listening, and of course their supervisory skills, how to set jobs up to succeed.
This is all great as well, Michael. It's not often, well, it's not unheard of, really. I mean, it's quite common that people are promoted through time with a company, so 12 months, so I get a promotion, another 12 months promotion, that kind of thing. So I guess it's fair to say a lot of managers these days don't have these kind of managerial skills, which is really important. So now what about job fit?
Sarah, you've just hit upon a topic for another day. Peter's a Peter principle, where we get promoted beyond the levels of our competency. So we might have a look at that on another day. But anyway, job fit and opportunity, that's roughly a third driver of retention, and it serves to maintain value for hire workers. The components of job fit retention drivers are, of course, recruiting the best candidates you have and employing them who fit the culture, and then letting them to get on with their work, particularly giving them individual job development and providing opportunities for challenging and innovative work.
Oh, sorry, Michael, I was a bit behind you there on the slides. So I actually must say that I do enjoy my job a lot more when I am given challenging work, but then I'm also given the freedom to, think for myself and work in a way that suits me. And when actually someone will listen to my ideas that I bring to a table, which makes a huge difference in my engagement levels. Now, you've mentioned about fitting within work culture, but isn't this the fourth driver of retention?
Yeah, fourth driver, but I'll just go back to the previous point, Sarah. People don't want meaningless and boring work. They want meaning in their jobs, particularly the top 10, 15% of your talent. If you put them in meaningless work, they'll move on very, very quickly. Now, back to workplace culture and environment. Once again, you're right. Companies spend a significant amount of money on resources on looking at culture and their employment, but don't always get it right. I'd really recommend to everybody, there's a very good study called Simply the Best. It's by Hull, H-U-L-L, and Reed, R-E-A-D, and it provides the characteristics, 15 characteristics of the best workplaces in Australia, and it's a terrific read. Very much encourage it. Now, let's have a look at what those qualities were. First of all, the quality of workplace relationships, then workplace leadership, having a say. Their voices are heard and respected. There are very clear values about what the company was about and the way people would interact. There was emotional safety and protection. The environment, the built environment, was good. People were being recruited fairly and well. Pay and conditions were good. We should note there in pay and conditions, it came in at number 9. People want autonomy and their uniqueness respected. They want ownerships of their job and identifying through it. They want to learn. They want passion. They want to have fun. And obviously, again, being good corporate citizens and connection to the community.
Michael, they sound like great strategies, and simply the best workplaces do actually sound like great places to work.
And it's proven in their bottom line, but again, that's a topic for another day. Sarah, I know we're a bit short of time now, but just before we open it up to questions, I'd like to take a minute or two just to go through a spreadsheet to show the actual costs of staff turnover. So if you've got the spreadsheet there, now here's an example I prepared before. But say we've got an organisation with 300 people in it, average salary is 50 grand, with average on costs of 23%. What does that really mean? Grossed up cost is 61%, monthly salary is this, and an annual payroll of $18.5 million. Now say our annual sales, our annual company turnover is $70 million. So that gives us average sales per employee of $233,000. Now again, that means for our annual salary of this, we're adding $171,000 worth of added value. That means we've got a productivity factor or multiplier of 3.78%. And that's pretty much in the normal range where you'll have a productivity factor of 3 to 5 to 7. Okay, now these are our financials. Now into staff turnover and productivity. Say we've got an annual turnover rate of 22%. Now, that's 66 people leaving you, and just say, for example, we've got an average productivity spread across the workforce of 75%. Frankly, Sarah, that's pretty high. It's a pretty good environment there. A lot of average workplaces be very happy if they could get 65%. Now, let's just say we can reduce our turnover from 22% down to 15%. Now that means here that 45% of people are leaving us, but 21 people are staying on. Now, particularly, these might be people you really want to keep. So, are there funding for it to keep them? Let's have a look. First of all, when people leave, there's obviously a lot of lost productivity, and people go down, they waste a hell of a lot of their time and everybody else's time. Very often there's a month of labour tied up in that. And then in learning curve costs, getting fully up to speed, very often it takes a person 3 months to get fully up to speed. There's the dollar calculation. It's a lot of money. So what does that mean to our bottom line? First of all, we save $108,000 in leaving and grieving costs, and in our learning curve costs, we save $324,000. That's $432,000 that hasn't gone out the door, that we've retained within the business because we've retained our people. Now, that's the equivalent of $1.6 million worth of sales. Now, what's not included in that? That's quite a conservative figure, because I haven't included in there recruitment and agency costs. I haven't included downtime. I haven't included induction. I haven't included in learning and development costs, overtime costs, or supervision costs. That's a terrific saving. Well, expensive, isn't it, Sarah? And that's why we have to take this really very seriously.
Yes, thanks, Michael. You've given us, again, a lot to think about there. I'm sure everybody is, oh no, I've just mucked this up a little bit. Apologies, everybody. Here we are. So,
did all that take your breath away? Overwhelmed by the figures.
Overwhelmed by the figures, and there's a lot to take in, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy having the time to read through all of those figures when we send all of these out after we finished here. So I will open this up to questions if I can get my PowerPoint to behave. Goodness gracious. So here we are at question time, and I have got a couple of questions coming in. The first one is, I can see how important this is, but how do I convince senior management to put more effort into employee engagement?
Sure, the act in there is literally to show the financial costs of it. There's a massive body of knowledge going back to 10 years that show profitability and engagement, and bluntly, a well-engaged workforce produces a profitability factor over and above an average workforce of about between 33 and 37% extra. Now, the reciprocal of that, of a disengaged workforce, the between 9% who are highly disengaged and 11% of your workforce who are actively disengaged, frankly, is a massive handbrake on an organisation, with productivity rates out of a 5-day week averaging from around 2 days to 3 days. So you might be paying for 5 days, you're really only getting 3 or 2 days productivity.
Excellent. I have a question from Bernadette. Having a large, approximately 3-to-1 casual workforce makes it difficult to track retention rates, as often casual staff just stop answering calls or accepting shifts but they don't resign. Suggestions how to track these figures?
I guess that depends what systems you might be using. HRIS systems you might be using, SAP, etc., obviously spreadsheeting it, etc., with putting into your spreadsheets when you might consider a job has been abandoned. If people miss 3 shifts or don't return calls, have they effectively abandoned their job? And maybe you've got, Bernadette, the default parameters around that.
And Ruth actually has a great question. Michael, maybe you could expand on what do you mean by the built environment?
Right. Ruth, that's the physical environment. That's the building, the furniture, the windows, the light, the air conditioning, all of those things in the building. Now, buildings don't have to be perfect, but we very much take our cue from buildings. So if something comes in and it looks very good, that's the way we tend to respond to it. But if something comes in and it's very grungy, then that's in turn how we'll respond to it.
And I have one last question here for you, Michael. I work at NGO, so we just can't compete with salary. What are some ways I can keep staff that don't cost us money to implement?
Right. Remember, people join not-for-profits largely because they want to make a difference. So the crucial part there is to ensure that they can make a difference, and you're bringing that message home, that the difference they're making as groups and individuals, bringing that message home, making it concrete to them all the time so they can see the tangible benefit of their work. Obviously, you can't underpay them, but particularly to reinforce the reason that they joined you in the first place.
That's terrific, and that's about all for today, Michael. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks for your time on your lunch break here, Michael, and thanks again for all of those who have joined us. I hope you've enjoyed the third of our 10 Lunchtime Lightbulb Series webinar, and that you now have a better understanding of how high the cost of turnover rates are, and maybe now you have some strategies in order to how to tackle it. Once again, we love to hear from you, and if you have any ideas, issues, items or topics that you would like us to turn into a webinar, please do contact us. Our contact details are up on the screen now. You could visit our website, pop us through an email, call us on the phone, or like us on Facebook. There's always lots of action going on there, and I'm sure everybody knows who I am, have my email address, so feel free to contact me directly. And that's all for today. Thanks, Michael.
Sarah, thank you to you, and particularly for getting out of your sick bed to join us, and thank you to everybody who joined us today.
Excellent. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.